It is time now to bring in our State House insiders to get reaction from last night's first presidential debate between the current President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Our Republican strategist tonight, Dave Wilson, our Democratic strategist, Antoine Seawright. And Antoine, I know you were in the spin room in Atlanta last night. Let me get your take on what you thought about the debate and what you're hearing today.
Well, it wasn't Joe Biden's best night, but it certainly was not the worst night I've seen from a presidential candidate. The part I was most encouraged by last night is the president stood there for 90 minutes and he laid in with fact, not feelings. You compare that to the former president, who all of the fact checkers, even those on more conservative leaning networks, indicated that much of what he articulated was far from the truth. At the end of the day, debates shape the conversation. They do not make the conversation. A debate in June will not determine the outcome of an election in November. I was so proud to see Joe Biden go to North Carolina earlier today, fired up, ready to go, mobilize a packed house in battleground North Carolina, and that's the Joe Biden most of us hoped to see would have hoped to see last night. We didn't, but we saw him today. And that old scripture that says, or that old thought that says, joy comes in the morning. That's what we saw today in North Carolina.
I will say that for every second he stammered and stuttered, it was probably a million votes that were probably lost, JR. I think this is the place where, yes, this does not make or break somebody, but let's go back to what we talked about the other night. You know, this was a very scripted, well-defined, no audience debate. We haven't had anything really like that since the Kennedy-Nixon debate of 1960. Those two went head-to-head in the first televised debate, and it broke Richard Nixon because people saw something in him that they were very uncomfortable with. And it was not until 8 years later that he could run it again and win. And what people saw last night was, can Joe Biden even finish these ideas? And then, of all things, you've got both candidates who are sitting there talking about how well they golf. Let's talk about how well we run a country. So that's what the folks that I've been hearing as I, pick up stuff at the grocery store and get ready for my weekend. I keep hearing these things from folks going, something just wasn't right. Was this even worth the debate? And we really wonder whether or not Joe Biden is going to end up being the nominee. And there's a pathway forward, a pathway not. And so Donald Trump, at least, Antoine showed up last night. Joe Biden was there, but I don't know if they both walked away with anything less than what they started with.
Well, if the conversation did not change because of the debate, then that means that essentially Joe Biden won. And if you look at how we truly measure a debate, how the voters respond to the debate, not what the pundits say, then by all accounts that I've seen, unless you've seen something different, JR and Dave, by all the accounts I've seen, if you compare the money raised, if you compare the way independent thinkers and independent voters said they felt about the debate and how they're breaking and plan to vote for Joe Biden, then by all measures, Joe Biden had a better night than advertised.
So I think it still boils down to those undecided voters. And it's to the other side of this that we've talked about before. Does this even instill a greater level of voter apathy when it comes to the November election? That's I don't necessarily think it was a big win or even a break even for Joe Biden last night, no matter what the rest of the numbers say, because for both of them, they're not doing enough right now to energize a base beyond what they already have. And that is the key part of everything that's going to go on from here on, is how are we going to win those people who haven't made up their minds yet?
I can tell you how you don't win those voters, and that's by the fact checkers indicating that almost 80% of what you say on the debate stage is simply not true. For an example, the former president took credit for lowering the price of insulin. We all know that it was Republican members of Congress and the former president who said that the Inflation Reduction Act, the legislation to lower the price of insulin, was not a good idea and tried to kill it and vote against it. But yet he took credit for it last night. So when we talk about a debate performance, it's whether or not you want someone who's going to get up there, express themselves in an authentic way, tell the truth, or someone who's going to get up there and mislead the American people with facts and leave it up to the fact checkers and ultimately to decide what's real and what's not.
I think where it really boils down to is people want to know whether or not a president's going to be able to finish the thought and the ideas that he has. so that he can express that on the national and the international stage. That's just a difference of opinion, though.
We're going to have to leave the conversation there. Dave, Antoine, as usual, thank you so very much. For the latest on politics, if you'd like to read more about the debate from last night, simply go to our website, WLTX.com.